Welcome to the Heavy Spoilers Show. I'm your host Paul, and in this video we're breaking down the Penguin. Episode 2 is now out, and it's filled with Batman Easter eggs and callbacks to the comics. We also have some theory times about what's going on, and you'd be absolutely quackers to miss it. So let me take you under my wing, and we'll get into how this episode feels like just the tip of the iceberg. With that out of the way, huge thank you for clicking this. Now let's get into Penguin.
Trust me. Ain't nothing about Sophia Falcone I can't handle.
Okay, so when we last left Oz, he'd sent the Falcones a message. This made it seem like Maroni was behind the death of Alberto, and he's here rubbing shoulders with them early on. Maroni? He's a fall guy! However, where we begin is in a nightmare. It's later revealed Sophia's in a therapy session which is being held by Dr. Julian Rush. Played by Theo Rossi, there's a lot of questions about who this really is. Now, it's possible he's the villain Rush, who typically shows up in Green Arrow comics. He's known for his superhuman strength, and it may be someone he morphs into down the line. For now though, he's just a therapist, and it's possible that he worked at Arkham alongside her. He escorts her in the vision, which seems like it's brought on by a hypnotic trance. This is done through using a red light, which is supposed to help with depression. We start seemingly at Arkham Asylum, and we see Sophia in her orange and white jumpsuit. This is just like what the Riddler had on, with the character wearing it in his confrontation with Batman. Joker also had one in the deleted scene, and it puts Sophia as being as dangerous as them. In both scenes, they talk with the Dark Knight whilst being behind some reinforced glass, which is also something that happens with the character. As we know, she was seen as the Hangman, who's a big villain that comes from the comics. In Dark Victory, she killed several of the police force and left a game of Hangman which acted as a clue. Sophia managed to go undetected for so long because she was feigning paralysis after the long Halloween. There, she was kicked out of a window by Catwoman, with her father also being murdered in this meeting. So she sought revenge, which led to her being caught, though they've clearly changed some things for the show. We later learned from a news report she killed several women but was then exonerated. However, some see her as being left free because Arkham didn't have the room to house her. This is due to the floods, and thus lots of criminals have been let out into Gotham. This could be setting up something similar to the Nightfall arc, in which both Blackgate and Arkham inmates were set free and Batman had to round them up. In the end, he got exhausted through doing this, and Bane was able to come in and easily beat the character. Either way, around her neck is a silver collar, which was meant to resemble the one found in Zaz's neck in the Arkham games. Last week, I did have a theory this might have left a mark, which would have explained the white scarf that she had around her neck. Now, while that's not necessarily the case, we do see at the 25-minute mark she's clawed around her neck. This bruising creates almost the effects of a noose, and it plays into the Hangman aesthetic. She's clearly haunted by nightmares and probably reliving the murders in her head. Now, though we later learn she was exonerated, she's clearly crazy and most probably did it. However, it could also be due to the fact that there was a collar around her neck in Arkham. If her nightmares are that she's stuck there, then this could be her simply clawing at her neck because in her dreams she's stuck there. If she's frantic and desperately trying to escape, that would make a lot of sense. She also sleeps in her closet, which may be due to it being small and cramped like her cell. Now, we also wonder if this has something to do with her father. When we look at the Batman, there could be a couple of clues there that he punished her through strangulation. In the movie, we learn that he choked Annika and that he also tried to strangle Selina as well. When I did my big breakdown on the movie, we also pointed out the scars on his cheek. Though this was a link to the comics, typically it was done by Selina, who did it in the film as well. However, they were there before she scratched him, which could be seen when he was watching the news report. In my research, I found these were actually done by Selina's mother when he was killing her. So Selina doing it was history repeating itself. Either way, this clawing at her neck may even be trauma from her father, who has a history of choking women. Potentially, he was the person that also strangled these women, and Sophia was blamed for it. Now, what's making these nightmares worse is the fact that she's haunted by the death of her brother. We see that he's had his finger cut off, which is how she discovered the body last week. Along with this came the ring, which was returned to its rightful owner, Maroni. Now, this scene's sort of a reverse of Dark Victory, as there it was Alberto and Arkham while she was on the outside. Now, in order to ground her, Rush holds Sophia and gets her to look about the office. This includes staring at a painting, which is sort of like a Rorschach test. The onlooker is the one who sees what's manifested in their subconscious, and to me, it looks like someone liking and subscribing. Now, I think there's also a couple of things in this that you can take it as being something different to that. The first of these is that it kind of looks like two mouths screaming. The top face looks like someone someone leaning back wearing glasses, whereas the bottom looks like a head in a shirt and jacket. There's also elements of a city skyline and the sea, or yeah, maybe you see something completely different. The idea of two mouths screaming though could highlight a split personality and a duel in the same body. Sophia is fighting herself over whether she's crazy and that darker side of the hangman within her, potentially. Now, I don't know if it's just me, but Rush is getting a little cozy with her. Pretty sure it's crossing the line, yeah, and I wonder if he's trying something on there.
I'm not safe. I'm home.
Now, home is something we often deem as being safe, however, there's a gang war brewing and a traitor amongst their midst. In episode 1, Alberto's body was driven to the front lawn, and now she feels like she's lost her security. I do wonder if she felt safer in Arkham, and this is why it was Alberto who got shot in the vision. Could also explain the sleeping in the cupboard. She was the one behind glass, whilst he was supposed to be safe, whereas she's completely helpless. Either way, we then cut to Oz, who's having his own visit to someone locked up. Sat in his car, staring at Blackgate, we can see security surrounding the isle. There's several boats and helicopters, making escape from the island nigh on impossible, but I'm sure people will try. Now in the comics, Blackgate's also typically on an island where they're clearly riffing off of Alcatraz. In the game Arkham Origins, you visited there at one point and try to stop a breakout from happening. It's the perfect twin to Arkham, and it's where the seemingly sane criminals are kept. Now journeying inside, we see the families are meeting. Maroni also has two sons in the comics, with these being Umberto and Pino. Now Maroni is clearly annoyed there's a war. However, he's reveling in being on top, and Oz points out he proudly wears the ring. Though Maroni says he could drop Oz in it, there's also the fact he's improved his reputation. There is of course a power vacuum in Gotham, with Falcone now out of the picture. We also hear the names of some of the family, with one of these being called Luca. Luca Falcone comes from the comics, but Batman never met the character. He was killed by the Red Hood gang, with Red Hood going on to become the Joker. That was chronicled during the Killing Joke, though it was later debated. Zero yet told us that though Joker was the one who got pushed in, we don't know if he was the leader forever. There was the possibility he killed them and took over the position, and there's lots of different continuities. Now a lot of the characters in the Mafia families were also based on The Godfather, which we saw most notably in The Long Halloween. That had a character called Luca Brasi, and I wonder if that's where they got the name from. Now we hear about a run they're doing over to Robbinsville, and a sign for this could be seen in the car chase during the Batman. Robbinsville was named after Holly Robinson, and it's became a mainstay location in Gotham. Now we see how duplicitous that Oz is, and that he's basically allowing
no hard feelings, right? We're all on the same side.
Yeah, sure, Oz. Yeah.
As we learn though, these are all patsies, and it shows just how manipulative that he is. Later on he gets in the Jeep with this guy, and it further cements him as being a loyal soldier. However, he pins this character as being the mole, and yeah, it's so well put together. Moving stuff in FEMA trucks, this stands for Federal Emergency Management Agency. Obviously, large parts of the city have been flooded, and people are homeless across Gotham. Like Renewal, it's being co-opted by the mob, and they're using the good things in the city to run their own games. So using this will allow them to move the shipments undercover, but Oz is roped into riding on the truck. This is the one that's going to come under fire, and it's not a good position to be in. Might not be something he waddles away from, you could say. This scene sort of felt akin to the car chase in The Dark Knight, which is definitely the sort of thing you want to mimic. We have a jokey sideman, someone who's a bit nervous, and a big truck getting swarmed by villains. Although it's not quite at that scale, it's still a great little moment and does what a lot of car chases tend to skip. That is character building, and we see how Oz manipulates those around him by playing the Joker. Pun not intended. Now in the background you can also hear Frank Sinatra. Sinatra is typically used in a lot of mobster movies, as he was thought to have deep ties with them. I love these kind of scenes at night though as well, and yeah, it's such a good action set piece. Telling jokes and killing the people on board, Penguin's able to survive the onslaught. Now back at the manor we see the back and forth with the family. Sophia is once more not really included in the discussions, and it's akin to what happened with Alberto. In The Long Halloween he was pushed out of meetings, and this is what made him become a killer. Though that's not going to happen in the show, it's clear Alberto wasn't part of the business. Thus he made his own thing along with Sophia, but she's getting cast to the side too. She knows there's a molo because the Maronis have too much info. The family then put word out that no one's allowed to sell their drops. Luca asks Sophia to stay out of this, but Oz uses it as a way to align with her. He knows that she's powerful enough to bring down the family, and if he keeps her on one side, they can be the king and queen. I can see a situation where they rule together, or maybe we'll end up with just Emperor Penguin. Now, after meeting with Victor, the latter's attention's caught by some missing posters. This is for the people who disappeared because of the flood. The one in the center was last seen in the subway station, and it's unlikely that she's ever going to be found. Victor was of course affected by the flood too, and they've touched upon his home being destroyed.
Crown Point. I'm from Crown Point.
Yeah, my cousin lived over there. She said it's like a no man's land now or something.
No Man's Land is an arc in the comics in which Gotham's been rocked by an earthquake. The entire city was in rubble, and Bruce had to rebuild it while taking down the villains. Reeves is taking clear inspiration from this, and the power vacuum played a big part of it too. Now, poverty was one of the factors that pushed Victor towards crime, and it does feel like he's a bit in over his head.
Since the seawall's collapse, crime has spiked all over Gotham, going up by a whopping 42%.
Now that statistic's important as it's likely going to play into the Batman too. At the end of the first film, Bruce said it would get worse before it gets better, and poverty and crime levels are often interlinked. Impoverished communities tend to have higher rates of crime, and thus we're likely going to see a war zone in Gotham. Ironically, the Riddler was trying to destroy the elite, but all he's done is make things worse for the poor. While the gangsters live it up in their mansions, we see how the people at the bottom are badly affected. We also have the name Hoang, with this potentially being a nod to Hoang Ni-Jen. Working as an artist for DC, it's possible this is a nod to them, but might not be, and I've also butchered the name. Also, I seen a theory last week that said Victor could be Victor Freeze, aka Mr. Freeze.
The Iceman cometh!
Mainly because of the name Victor.
I don't believe it.
And because he had a slush puppy at the end of the episode. It's Mr. Freeze, I'm telling you, I agree with that 100%. But I did have a theory I brought up on the Agents of Fandom podcast last week. When discussing where I thought the show would go, I actually think it'll come down to a choice. I feel like ultimately Oz will have to choose between whether to kill him and side with Sophia, or kill Sophia and side with Victor. Siding with Sophia will allow her and Oz to take over Gotham with Falcones connections and this brand new drug. This is what Oz has wanted forever, and I feel like he'll seize that opportunity and kill Victor to get it. Now, why would he have to do that? Well, firstly, he's the bad guy. Though we want to see Penguin in a good light, ultimately he's the bad guy and he's a complete piece of shit. Beyond that though, there's CCTV at the club, and I feel like Sophia will discover that Alberto was there as well. Now, who else was there? Well, Oz was, but Victor was as well. Victor's friends have already been roped into it, and I feel like we'll get a similar situation in what happened in episode 1. This time though, it'll be Victor with Oz having to choose whether to kill him. That's my theory anyway, and I think it'll come down to saving him or seizing power. Now they then return back to Oz's, which is located at Burgess Jewelry. In case you missed our last video, this was a nod to Burgess Meredith, who played Penguin in the 66 show. There's also the mention of Blue Heron, which is a 5-star restaurant from the comics. Now our editor Matt pointed out that one of Oz's paintings also resembles the one in Dr. Rush's room. Cutting to Sophia, we then hear about her being released from Arkham and get a quick flash of the radio. With this, we can see the reports from GCR-FM, which is one of the most notable stations in Gotham. In Arkham Origins, Riddler hijacked the frequencies on the tower and used them as a way to chat to Batman. As we get a long shot of the Jeep, we can also see down the street and the central square in Gotham that started off the film. Now at Penguins, he tells a story of how he was hired as a driver even though he couldn't drive. He took the job and seized the opportunity though, and over the weekend taught himself how to do it. He said he landed in a ditch, and though this might have been what messed up his foot, he was at work the Monday, so I doubt it. Either way though, this was to a guy named Pinchy, who Falcone caught talking to the police. He had him killed, but ironically Falcone was a rat too. A rat with wings, you could say. Inviting some girls over, this also includes Eve Carlo. Carmen Ejogo was recently asked if she was any relation to Basil, with Basil Carlo being a version of Clayface. Carmen said, who knows, the speculations are astounding, and it'll be interesting to see if they do something with that. Now these girls are there to take their clothes off, but if you want to put your clothes on, you should check out our merch store right below the video. You can snag our pick up a Penguin shirt, and we also have our Alien Chestburster one, and as always, theory time, and it would be a theory crime if you missed out on these deals. Now across town, we then cut to a drunk cop who we learn is Marcus Wise. Coming from the comics, he was known as a crooked cop who used to blackmail the other cops into doing his bidding. Arrested after being exposed by Robin, it's clear this version's not a good guy either. Now when looking at the design, it's possible I could potentially be playing off Bullock. Not only does he have the long brown coat, but he's also an addict. Earth 1 started off with Bullock rolling into Gotham as a bright-eyed and naive detective. He'd received fame from hosting a cop show in which he exposed corruption in the US. However, Gotham broke him and we ended with him turning to the bottle. By part 2, he was all over the place and you can see the parts of that here. Bullock has always been a decent cop though, but that trench coat and drinking made it feel like it might be him. Could also be a reference to Eckhart, who starred in Batman 89. Breakdown on the channel now. When it comes to Bullock though, I think we've only had him in live action ones, and maybe this is Reeves looking at elements like him to build out characters like this. Anyway, Penguin introduces Victor to a cam girl, but his nervousness causes his stutter to re-emerge. You might notice it reappears once Oz leaves, showing that he now feels comfortable with him. There's also lip service to him losing everything, and it's clear he's as desperate as Penguin is. Now at this point we get the mention of No Man's Land, but beyond that she also mentions this is going down at Crown Point, which is a location where Penguin and Sophia faced off at in Gotham. Shoutouts to Matt for that one. Now in the back we see Oz looking at the blackmail photos of Johnny. In the bottom we can catch a piece of paper for Lorna's lounge, which is likely a nod to Lorna Shaw. Lorna was one of the first people Bruce fell in love with after his parents' deaths, and she helped to pull him slightly out the darkness. Eve then comes in to confront him about the alibi and how it's gonna get her and her girls in trouble. She kinda reminds me a bit of Catwoman in The Dark Knight Returns, who was running Kyle escort services. I do wonder if they took inspiration from that, and it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. The rooms last week looked a lot like Selina's haunts in year 1, and let me know below if you agree or not. Now the next day we see Penguin donning a white shirt with a black tie, black suspenders and black pants. It's very similar to his getup in the comics, especially with the suspenders, and he looks very sharp like someone else around here. The guy's slicking back his hair though, and we see Eve in the background picking out her money. It's kind of like the classic back to business image, with them both treating this like a transaction. They do kiss goodbye though, and I do wonder how this is all going to play into everything. Now across at his mother's we see as Oz gets in his old car that he drove there last week. It had rims on it, but Oz was trying to downplay his image. We hear that his mother's dementia is getting worse and that she was found by the landlord in the street without a coat. She said she was late for mass and clearly didn't know what day it was. Suggesting permanent care, Oz ends up paying him to keep an eye on her. I think the worry there is that the mob might get to her, and this is why Oz goes above and beyond to keep her out of the system. However, he has promised he's going to get her out of her home and into something bigger. So it makes sense that he wouldn't send her to a home, as this would kind of shut down that dream. Now this clearly sits with her, and as they dance she asks when it's going to happen. Oz also plays Tears and Laughter by Dinah Washington. This is about the ups and downs of life, and it's something both have gone through, but it has a hopeful tone to it, with the pair both believing they are going to get out of it. I do wonder though if his brothers have also added the strain on her life. They obviously haven't been in the show, they're dead, and Penguin later says they didn't have a service for them. The way it's phrased though, I'm guessing that both died at the same time. So she's pining all her hopes on him and wants him to be bigger. Matt also pointed out that this relationship's very similar to the one that Arthur has with his mother and Joker. The pair also have a scene dancing together, but I just hope it doesn't end up like how it did there. However, that movie also had a Frank Sinatra song, and like I've been saying, it's all connected. Breakdown on the channel now as well, we just dropped a new one. Now in the show, his mother's name's Frances, whereas in the comic she was called Esther. I do wonder if we'll learn about Penguin's father Tucker, but at the moment he's clearly out of the picture. Likely dead. Yay! We then see Oz and Victor in the plum Maserati. Last week we went back and forth over what happened to it, as the car got completely totaled in the Batman. However, the colour threw us off, so I didn't know if he just had it repaired. Huge shout out to Suave Joker though, who pointed out that this is a new car, which could be seen due to the temporary paper license plate as opposed to the metal one on the Batman. Now we see people protesting the funeral and can catch that this is about the hangman. There's mentions of how your daughter could be next, and my guess is Sophia went after young girls. We'll talk about this more later on, but you can hear the girls singing Hangman creepily at the start of the episode. It also sounded like they're playing on something like the Freddy Krueger nursery rhyme, but let me know below if I'm reaching with that. If she did kill those women though, then she should definitely be behind bars, which is an image given to us when Oz looks up at her. Yeah, we catch her stood in a window with the railings appearing just like prison bars. This scene is also reminiscent of the funeral in Batman. That had a protest outside of it as well, and one of Riddler's signs can be spotted at this one. They were present there too, and it shows there's still unrest in the city. Seeing Sophia turn and look outside, we get a better look at get some of the signs. There's things like hang the hangman, the Falcones equal fascists, and 7 is too many, which is about Sophia's victims. There's also a long one that talks about how everyone's living in a system with humanity being ruled by a handful of men. This is something Riddler wanted to break down, and he went after the most powerful figures in Gotham. All were men in different sections of society, with there being the mayor, the commissioner, and also in the underworld. I think it's something people have probably thought about at some point in their life, and Penguin knows it could be him rocking the cradle. Talking with Sophia, it's a stark contrast to their conversation before. There he was running after her, whereas here they're standing side by side. Sophia also walked faster because she knew he had a disability and it wasn't easy to catch up with her. Also, something I really picked up on during episode 1 on a rewatch happened when they got to the subway. Boarding the train, Oswald looked down at the disabled seats, but he refused to sit down. He doesn't want to seem weak or like he needs any help, and it's all a point of pride. Now he relates to Sophia because they've both lost their brother or brothers. Now Oz recounts when they died being taken out by his mother and her dancing. He said that she dressed up and went out with him, and I feel like she's stuck in this moment. She definitely wears expensive clothes just for sitting about, and yeah, there's lots of things you can read into it. Oz then gets a text saying they need to meet, and we see as Wise drops off one of Maroni's guys. One of the Wise guys. Though Sophia isn't thrilled with the timing, it at least gives them a chance to get some answers. Elsewhere, Oz meets with the family, and though they go to cut him, he talks his way out of it. Presenting the dirt on Johnny, we discover the woman he's been hooking up with Luca's wife. Now this highlights the kind of man Carmine was. Luca was family, and he still wouldn't tell him that his wife was screwing someone else. This is because he was a business partner, and he put business above everything, which is probably why he had no issues choking his daughter Selena, or his daughter Sophia, which it could be that too. Now at the wake, we see some of the finest foods, cigars and champagne. There's also videos of her and her brother growing up, which causes Sophia to drink a stiff martini. Shaken, not stirred. People are still uneasy around Sophia though, and this includes Carla. Now this is a bit of a change up from the comics, as there Carla was Johnny's mother. Johnny was murdered by Holiday at the start of the long Halloween, and this then put Carla on the warpath. When Alberto was seemingly killed, Carla found Holiday's gun and swore to kill him with it to avenge the fallen sons. Little did she know the killer was Alberto, and there's always been this duplicitous side of the family. Carla never found out who did it, however she did come close. Looking through files, she was shot and killed when going to Alberto's, with him being revealed to be the killer in the end. In the series, she's very much a lock up your daughter's type and refuses to let her go near someone with a reputation for killing them. It's sort of a play on the protective side she has in the comics, but there it was of course her son who got killed. She also says,
We should plan a girls' trip.
this will have the pair going to Italy, and I'll talk more about in just a bit how this is clearly a plan. She'll have a trip to Little Italy. Little did we know that we riddled some middleman who didn't do diddly, because she killed the wrong person, and I got that in one. I got that in one this time. Now while this is going on, Penguin arrives at the party and puts in place a plan to pin it on Johnny. The entire time, this guy's whole plan's been to blame others and let them take the fall. Now, this was inspired by Put the Blame on Mame. That was a song about how 3 of the biggest disasters in America were gonna be blamed on Mame. This included the Great Chicago Fire of 1871, the Great Blizzard of New York in 1888, and the 1906 San Francisco earthquake, as per the wiki behind the lyrics. Clearly just making up people to blame stuff on. It's a bit like Ryan Airy blaming me for why his wife finds other YouTubers so attractive. Fuck's sake. Do not tell him I said any of that. Now Oz is blaming all these major fallouts on other people and slowly having them take each other out. Now Sophia is then called in to see Luca while Victor operates on the outside. Caught going into one of the cars, he ends up making a dash for it. I do wonder if he'll be spotted and recognized later, which is something that could lead to Oz throwing him under the bus. Now who he does throw under the bus is the captive. Initially he's still drugged, but it's clear he gets the message to blame Johnny. However, Victor ends up calling Oz to tell him he couldn't get the jewels into the car. So Oz isn't really left with any other option. Killing the captive, he then plants a knife on the guy who he agreed to have no hard feelings with. Just stuff like that, so well done, and it shows how much of a slimy weasel he is. Also Ryan, yeah, I'm sorry for bringing up your wife. It was just a stupid thing to say and I shouldn't have said it, and I apologize. No hard feelings, but I will stab you in the back. There's absolutely no loyalty, and yeah, it's such a deep character trait. Now the body is discovered and everyone's held in the house who was involved in the drops mob's transportation. Using Viddy as a distraction, I love how it shows how he can quickly change his plans. I think he knew if he went with Viddy, it would be way too obvious after pushing him, but yeah, great way to do it. If you watch a scene again, you can also see Oz's hands down by his pocket as he pulls it off. So slick, and it leads to Luca showing how merciless he is. Maybe you could have questioned him for more information. Kinda reminded me of Homelander just killing people when they start answering questions. It's not a good interrogation tactic, mate. It's not a good way to find stuff out. Now with Luca, we see several Godfather parallels. He tells Sofia that she should go to Italy, so it's clear this conversation with Carlo was doing that the nice way. The trip to me had its own ulterior motive, and they were clearly just trying to get her out of the way. Now though, that's not worked, and Luca's telling her what to do. It reminds me a lot of Michael going out to Sicily, and that happened while a gang war was going on in the city, which he was of course a part of. However, the door being closed on her also echoes the ending of the film. There we watched as Kay was shut out while the rest of the men discussed the business. The Godfather was of course a big influence on The Long Halloween, not only down to the artwork but also down to the mobsters. So it was great seeing these little nods to one of my favourite film trilogies, and yeah, go a breakdown on the channel for that as well. A huge shout out to Matt for pointing out how the end of the episode is similar to the Pine Barrens episode of The Sopranos. Penguin ends up kicking Victor into the grave, and I feel like it's foreshadowing for what's to come. He lets him know he can kill him just as quick, and it's a bad guy to get in league with. Called by Sofia, Oz ends up going out to her, which is where we see several graves. Falcones states his death is November 5th, which is when the explosives were set off by the Riddler. This was playing on the gunpowder plot in England, in which Guy Fawkes attempted to blow up Parliament on that same date. We also have Isabella Falcone, who in the comics used to be a Maroni. Initially, he sent her to hook up with Carmine so he could rat about him to Maroni. In the work, Carmine actually murdered Isabella in front of Sofia because he discovered she was an informant for his biggest rival. She too was strangled by Carmine, so again it all ties together neatly with that. Now she then looks down at Alberto's, and we get the confirmation of the date with it being the 13th. Also, you might notice there's one last space there, so yeah, she might not make it out this season either. Unveiling the diamonds, we learn that they were planted at the Patsy's apartment. It's a great way to bring everything together, and Sofia announces she's going against the family. She's gonna have Oz at her side, and he agrees by saying let's dance. I do wonder if we will get a similar scene with him and his mother, but instead we'll have Sofia there dancing. I feel like the pair might end up as partners in the end, with Victor dead and his mother probably out of the picture as well. Thematically, it feels like Oz is gonna lose everything, and this will all happen in his quest for power. It's the classic mobster tale. This union is then cemented by the credits by the song Happy Together, which we can hear being sung by Floor Cry. This is about someone who says they can't see themselves loving anybody else, and it definitely feels like that's the sort of union they could have forming. Or maybe not. Not at all, which is what I love about the show. It's so unpredictable, and that's made ever more so by its two incredible main characters. You really don't know how it's gonna go, and each character feels like they're ready to completely change the dynamics in a second. Makes the series really enthralling for me, because even though I'm well aware of what happens in the comics, it doesn't feel like they're doing the same beats. Now, I don't feel like this episode quite lived up to the hype of the premiere, but that's often to be expected from a second episode. Typically, they put everything they can into the first to hook the viewers, but I did enjoy the direction they took. Playing things with Sofia and her past really helps to flesh out the character, and it also adds to the mystery. Though I think she did kill those kids, she could just be a victim of the world she grew up in. Seeing what her father was like would have caused big issues for her, and it's kind of a character study on whether it's nature or nurture that makes us. So I love that there's these deeper layers to this stuff when it could have ended up being a pretty surface level comic book mob series. So yeah, still on board, still really enjoying it, and in the end I'd of course love to hear your thoughts on the series as well. Please drop a like on the video, and if you want to support the channel as a member of the Spoiler Society, then please click the join button. You get early access to videos every week, and it goes a massive way towards helping us out. Now if you want something else to watch, we're doing lots of Batman breakdowns at the moment, and there'll definitely be something on the channel that you're bloody gonna love. We did Joker just the other day, we've done Batman 89 recently, The Batman, and Penguin episode 1. So you've got no excuses for not going and watching them and clicking all the adverts that pop up throughout. I heard YouTube's doing adverts on pause screens now. Dear me, bit greedy that. I'm gonna ruin the videos, but thanks for watching through them if you did. Thanks for powering through all that crap that they keep adding into it that destroys the viewing experience. Hopefully this video's been alright for you, and if it has, I'd love to see you again next week. You take care until then, peace!